very difficult to put people together, to really be together, and not to create a war. So it's great to feel love and to share love. It makes me feel good. It changes something in my physiology.
Hello, inspiring professionals, and welcome back to Evolve Quest. And in today's video, again, we have two wonderful guests, one of whom is my husband, Peter.
Hello.
He's a fellow coach and a spiritual seeker and a personal development junkie like me. And secondly, we have a wonderful guest who my husband spent some time with working on his spiritual journey called Publio Valle. Welcome, Publio.
Thank you.
I know Publio from a time when he was, still working with this organization. And it's an organization that works with shaman in the Peruvian Amazon. And this is where we met, in the Peruvian Amazon. It was a very significant experience for me to be there and work with these shaman and their medicine and the rest of it. And there was a lot of things going on which were very, very big for me. And Publio left a very, very lasting impression. It was just the depth of wisdom that came out of him at every stage of the way was really something that stayed with me. So I'm really happy to be back in contact with you, Publio. And
likewise, Peter.
I don't even know how to introduce you. You're like part, sage, yogi, shaman, healer, therapist. So, tell us, how would you introduce yourself?
I'm a human being.
First and foremost.
Versus doing.
That's how I usually solve this conflict, how to introduce myself. I usually say I'm a human being, and my work is to be a conscious human being, aware of what I'm looking for in this planet, aware of what I'm looking for in this life, aware of people around me, just a human being that dares to look and to pay attention to what is really happening around me. Yeah. I think that's the essence of my work.
Okay.
When I went to university, I've started studying international relations. This is my graduation. I studied international relations at the University of Brasilia. And it was a difficult time in my life because I had so many dreams. I felt that I would find answers in the academic world. I thought, okay, these are the people that know what is happening. These are the people that probably have some answers, some real answers about life, about happiness, about practical solutions for my personal anxieties or doubts around life in itself, and also for the world, for civilization. And of course, I was very frustrated to see what were the answers the academic world was bringing to me. I perceived very early how limited it was. I was very lucky because I had the opportunity finally to get to Peru in that time. That was when I had my first ayahuasca ceremony with shamans in Pucallpa. That ceremony was epic for me because there I know it's almost a cliche, but it was a moment when I could reconnect with my heart. I could get out a little bit from the mind and from trying to find solutions, and simply to reconnect with my heart and to remember the beauty of being alive, of seeing nature, of hearing the birds, of observing the moon, of seeing the trees, and to reconnect with this essential mystery that is to be alive. Now, I feel that the mind tends to normalize everything. We get into this kind of routines, and we have all these duties, and we have all these things to do, and so forth and so on. But when we really allow ourselves to perceive this reality from a different perspective, there is this basic question, that doesn't have a specific answer, I would say, but it is mysterious. It is strange, the fact of being alive. It's like, okay, I have a hand, I move, there's all these beings, I'm breathing, and then there's, it's a mystery. And so after this time with the Shipibos, with the shamans in Pucallpa, in Peru, I had a certainty within me that I would find some more deep explanations to what I've perceived there in first person. In Asia, that took me to Asia, where I lived for almost 5 years, learning more about meditation and yoga in the origin. I've done a post-graduation in yoga therapy. I lived in some monasteries there, practicing different modalities of meditation, discovering more about myself and about this reality. Yeah. In a nutshell, this is a little bit of my story.
It's just a little bit.
Since you've started on this path and as you progressed, how did it affect your life? Like your relationships, the work that you do? Like what changes did you observe around you?
The main changes, I think my defenses around people lower and lower. I feel it's getting easier and easier for me to relate with people from different backgrounds. I feel that there is less fears or even expectations around people. You know? It's I feel very connected to people. These friendships that flourish as a result of being able to be more connected and more respectful with myself. It's easier to be more respectful and connected with people around me. This, I would say, is one of the most beautiful things that this path brought me. You know, the capacity of recognizing the beauty in people, of learning how to love them as they are, and to respect that, and to be patient, and to share the joy.
And I'm sure like this has, deeply connecting with people will change the way you are, improve the way you are with your family, with your friends, at work, in your love life. So I'm sure it's applicable everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you give a few tips of, for instance, if someone wanted to implement, some of those ideas and learnings that you've received there straight away in their relationships or at work?
Okay, to bring it into this kind of context, I would say that the first element is that people need to want. They need to want. Not something that can be just imposed. And the real will to do something will only come from the awareness that there is suffering and that there's nothing wrong about suffering, but that there's something to learn out of that suffering. So to recognize that there is a discomfort, to recognize that there is something itching there, that there's something out of balance, that there's something out of order. And this would be one of the first approaches, I would say, be it in a company, in a business, or in a relationship. This is one of the first steps to recognize and not to judge it.
Yeah.
And there are several famous, important techniques that are being used in more formal context, like nonviolent communication is a great tool that people are using all over the world. Here in Brazil, it's huge. People are developing it more and more. It works in the micro of relationships, personal relationships, and it also works in the business context. The roots of nonviolent communication comes from Buddhism. That is basically learning how to be present without reacting. I love Jack Kornfield when he defines meditation. He defines meditation as the capacity to listen with an open heart. What is my interpretation of that? Most of the time, we are listening, but we are judging. We are listening, but we are expecting a very specific result. We are listening, but we are immediately trying to fix or to change or to find that solution. To listen with an open heart is to let go of an agenda.
What would be your advice, like having tried all these different things, like what is the most, in a way, effective and profound? I know it's different for different people. Like you can.
It is definitely.
Yeah,
but
from your experience,
so many possibilities. But I would say that the first thing, at least for me, as I perceive, is to understand that it's not exactly a path of self-growth. It's not. It's basically a path of self-acceptance, first and foremost. It's a path of remembering who we are already, because I see that there's so much today about self-improvement, self-growth, self-development. It's so exhausting. You never get there. You never get there. It's never enough.
Yeah. What would you say helped you the most to help to this deeper space of self-acceptance and kindness to yourself?
I feel it's a constant practice. No, it's a constant practice. But it was a combination of many things. I feel that the work with Vipassana and mindfulness meditation in Buddhist traditions helped me a lot. But then I'm also very grateful to Western teachers that helped to make a bridge, you know, especially to Western needs of self-compassion, self-acceptance. Like Tara Brach is a wonderful teacher from the US. She has this book, Radical Acceptance. I listen a lot to her talks and the practical effects of it, and how it's not exactly about self-esteem, but it's about self-compassion and connecting with this space that allows us to shine as we are unconditionally. Mm-hmm. The University of Light, this community where I lived for over a year, also was a place that helped me to let go of these defenses and these fears and allowing myself to be myself more and more in a more comfortable way. And it's so interesting because when you really allow yourself to be yourself, people feel it. There is a nice presence there. There is like a permission, a beautiful permission and allowance for people also to be. Yeah. And then the truth happens, and then the grass grows, the flowers bloom, the tree does what it needs to do. So, yeah.
You also just mentioned the Temple of the Way of Light, and this is the Ayahuasca retreat center where we met first time. And I want to make a little bit of time to talk about the work there. You happened to be there during a visit from Gabor Mate, who's an interesting character as well. So I'd love you to talk about that and what his experience was and what other people's experience was of him.
Yes, that was a beautiful retreat, a very deep, very intense, very special retreat. The interesting thing about Gabor Mate is that being a doctor, being Canadian, I see Gabor as a bridge, because the work with ayahuasca is something that brings a lot of suspicion. People feel very suspicious about it. Oh, this psychedelics, this crazy things, not for me. Maybe some hippie thing. Gabor Mate helped to make this formal connection, this formal link, in a very respectful, conscious, and organic way.
Yeah, like what I'm really curious about to hear your take on is I've had a brief experience with ayahuasca as well, about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And in other ways, I also came in touch with this insight or memory of truth. I don't know how to describe it. On not just through ayahuasca, but also through Vipassana meditation and other practices. Brief encounters with that. And every time I really struggle to put it in words. And secondly, to being able to point others to it. So I'm just curious, you having so much experience in that space, like, how do you talk about it?
The experiences in itself are not the most important thing. In ayahuasca and meditation, we can have all these visions, we can have all these perceptions, but if these experiences, these ceremonies, these retreats, if they are not helping me to be more kind, they are not helping me to be more authentic and helping me to develop compassion, then okay, they're nice, it's entertaining, but what are the real use of them? I would say that the best expression of my experiences are my smile, my laughter, or even my sincere tears or authentic presence as human beings.
And also, how do you actually describe what you perceived in that experience?
I would say that I had to go to India and to live there for 5 years to find some more clear descriptions of what were those experiences, of what I've seen. In the end, it's always this challenge, of the mind. It's not a realm of the mind. So that's why it's so challenging to describe it, because it's not in the realm of this logic, of this rationality of words.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in this field of rights and wrongs or goods and bads. It's a little bit below that. It's a space in which there are no doubts. So there's nothing to be explained either. And it's a level, it's inevitable to say, it's a level of consciousness.
Talking about catharsis, it reminds me of one last thing I'd like to ask you about, and that's your work with Stanislav Grof. Because now at his pretty advanced age, as I understand it, he's only working with holotropic breathing now. That's pretty much all he teaches, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you studied with him at the Esalen Institute. So tell us about that. What is holotropic breathing all about? And
Stan, he's a myth. No? He's a walking myth. He's a walking legend. That guy. It was very special to be in his presence. And what I enjoyed the most looking at him and being around him those days is that he has the presence of a very wise man, but at the same time, he feels there's something childlike about him. There's this thing in his eyes. There's something very alive there. There's a contentment of a man who found out something, who connected with something. So, and he exudes that. The interesting thing about the holotropic breathwork is that he and his wife, Christina, they perceived that they couldn't rely on substances to keep developing this work. They said there must be a way to help people to get into these deeper layers of consciousness without the use of any substance. And so they started researching, and they perceived that it would be through breath, that so many cultures would be able to reconnect with these realms without the use of any substances. So it was through breath and through music. This was a common thing in Africa, here in South America, and in so many other contexts. So the holotropic breathwork is basically a technique a very powerful technique that will help people to reconnect with their intrinsic wholeness. So the very word holotropic, it was beautiful to see Stan explaining that. Holo, they got the inspiration from the word heliotropic. That is a word used in botanics, I guess, to describe this tendency that plants and trees should grow towards light. Helios, that is the sun, the word for sun. When you visit so many different traditions that are talking about real happiness, real contentment, it's all about bringing us back to the sense of wholeness that we lost in some stage of life. It's not about recreating it. It's not about achieving it, but it's about remembering it, coming back to this layer where we are, we still are, and we will always be whole, independently of anything that might be happening in our lives.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. Just from this brief conversation, I'm sure you have so many other examples of paths that can bring you to the same experience of wholeness. And just from everything you've said, so I've also had similar sort of taste of similar wholeness experience through ayahuasca, through meditation, and through rebirthing, which is a type of breath work as well. So all these instruments are out there for people to really research and connect to, and this is really great and amazing to hear about this experience with you, because also you'll just exude this feeling of kindness and connectedness. So, and then when you rediscovered your authenticity through some of those practices, what was it can go back to just being absolutely childlike when we have to have adults looking after us to make sure we don't break things, and also especially for people who work in large organizations where in a way it's very difficult to be fully authentic. Is it about a balance or something else where you
absolutely It's about being able to be mature and responsible for what you're feeling, but not forgetting the joy and the possibility of joy all the time. There is a teacher that I like very much from Gaia Education, from Finkhorn, that she says, if it's not fun, it's not sustainable.
I totally agree with that.
If it's not fun, it's not sustainable.
Yeah. And
of
also,
course
like,
it's
I'm
about,
amazed how fun means so many different things to many people. My cleaner loves ironing. That's how fun. Like, I love exploring and like personal development. That's my fun. Some people go like, oh gosh, that's so boring. And other people, fun for them is managing teams.
I would say that fun is something that elevates me. It's something that makes me feel healthy. To be fun is not about avoiding anything. It's about waking up in the morning and having my chest open for the day, not waiting for something to finish. I'm not waiting for my work to finish to then have fun. It's not something separate.
And this is really what our work is about, is to connect people with that fun so that they can go to work, they wake up every day with that open chest, to remove them from the lives that shut them down.
To take away the fun.
It's about regaining this capacity of looking at things in a clear way.
So what would you say, like, what are the daily practices or anything else that kind of helps you, sustains you, this memory that's inside in you, like day to day to day?
There are so many things and so many possibilities, no? But I would say that for me, one thing that really helps is to offer space for people to listen, to offer space for people to be, like, to listen attentively, like to ask something and to be there for that person, to hold the space for a friend or for someone that might be my client or family, to offer that space where I'm fully present with that person is something that helps me to be connected in my daily life.
Yeah, so not just using meditation to feel present, but actually using experiences and meetings to, and be in the present moment in those encounters.
Oh yes, there are infinite ways of perceiving meditation.
That's a gift for both parties.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. We receive, we receive also when we're offering. Wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for being present with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, Publio, I mean, this could go on for weeks and weeks, so we could have such interesting. But thank you so much for making time, and it's been absolutely fascinating, and we're really very thankful. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All the best.
Looking forward to learning more about your work, and come visit us when you're in London.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I will.
Excellent. All the best.
Cool.